What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel. I am Noah Hiles, and we are joined today by a newcomer who will definitely be a frequent guest, if not a co-host on this show. It's the Post-Gazette's latest hire in the sports department, Abby Schnable. Abby, glad to have you on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. Fourth day on the job and I'm already making my debut. I love it.
Yeah, I think this is just our show now, honestly, because Andrew got too big for us. He moved up to covering the Penguins and the Pirates. He doesn't care about college sports anymore. So I think it's and they got Chris doing a million shows on this network. So I think this is just me and you moving forward, which I'm pretty excited about because in the short time we've had to interact, you clearly know your college sports, especially college basketball, which is the season that we are in the midst of right now. And you had quite the introduction to Pittsburgh college basketball Wednesday evening. Abby was at the Duquesne-Loyola Chicago game. And for those who have been living under a rock since Wednesday evening, something quite interesting happened there. And before I turn it over to you, I just want to set the scene. This is Abby's first time going to a Duquesne basketball game. She's there not even to really write a game story or anything, just there to get to know some people around the program, one of the many programs she's going to be covering for us. And early in the second half, someone dressed as an Uber Eats delivery driver walks on the court mid-game, and the whole thing goes viral. It was on Good Morning America today, ESPN. Al Roker had Uber Eats delivered to him as a joke about it. While he was giving his weather forecast. ESPN credited Abby's reporting on the entire thing. She texted Chris and I during the Duquesne game, said, "What should I do about this?" We said, "Oh, you gotta write a story about it," and she did. And when we went to bed last night, it was the number one trending story on our entire website. So Abby, just take me through your experience. First Duquesne game, first really game that you were covering for anything really here. And that's your first byline in the Post-Gazette is a viral story about an Uber Eats guy interrupting a college basketball game.
Yeah, so it's so weird to just think about because, Wednesday was my third day on the job. I hadn't written a story yet. Well, I wrote one, but it hadn't been published yet, hadn't been looked at yet. And so I'm just going to this game, and for those who don't know, I'm a Loyola Chicago alum, and so I was like, I'm gonna go to the Duquesne Loyola game, get the feel for Duquesne since I'm gonna be around a lot, and then see my alma mater because why not if I can kill two birds with one stone? And so I'm sitting there. We have an intern, Ben Gottschalk, who covers Duquesne for us, writes a game story. And so I'm just like live tweeting for fun, keeping track of everything. But yeah, like Noah said, wasn't planning on writing. It was going to be a quick business trip in and out of the UMPC Fieldhouse, Cooper Fieldhouse, I think is what it's called. I'm getting there. I'm learning.
Yeah, it's all right.
And so, yeah, I didn't really think anything of it. And then so the second half comes in, and Loyola's down in the corner. Philip Allison has the ball, and he turns the ball over in a pretty reckless turnover that you don't really see in D1. Like it just wasn't very typical of any D1 player, but definitely not him. And I was like, that was weird. And so I noticed he had looked behind him, and I was like, why is he looking? He's in the corner. Like, why is he looking behind him? And I looked down, and there's this guy decked out in yellow with a McDonald's bag and what looked to be a McDonald's Coke, to be specific. And I was like, that's so weird. And then they go down onto the other side of the court, and all of a sudden the ref stopped the game pretty suddenly, and I was like, what's going on, trying to figure out. No one really knew. I was sitting right by the broadcasters, and they even were like, what's going on? And we all looked down, and security's got the Uber Eats guy who tried to go back on the court. Sorry, my dog loves to sneeze in the middle of videos.
You're good.
Literally, security's got the guys like, you can't go on the court. You can't go on the court. And so I tweeted about it just offhandedly because, why not? Uber Eats guy just came on the court. It's kind of funny. Ref swings by and says to the broadcasters that, never seen that happen before. And then it's like, next thing I know, it's blown up. I'm getting tagged in things about other people like commenting it. We see the Uber Eats guy go up into the upper concourse and be like, what, like reunited with his customer, I guess, to grab it. And it was just like such a crazy thing that happened. Like, you can't make something like that up. It's just so surreal that it just happened in anywhere. And
Yeah.
especially my first game covering any team for the Post-Gazette. And so it's just, I just couldn't believe how fast it blew up. Like, it was
Yeah.
like, all of a sudden my phone's blowing up, the announcers are talking about it, everyone's talking about it. And yeah, like Noah said, I was just vibing, I was just responding to tweets, getting my name out there. And then like all of a sudden I was writing my first story about for the Post Gazette about an Uber Eats delivery guy.
So when they escorted him off the court, he wasn't reprimanded. They didn't take the guy off in handcuffs or anything. They just said, "Hey, no, you can't be on the court.
Yeah,
Go
no,
back up there with the food that you brought in from the outside of the arena
no,
and just continue to roam free."
no reprimand that I saw. Yeah, literally, it just, he was taken through the tunnel, and then all of a sudden we saw him up because the video boards had started showing him like looking again for his customer. And then the video boards had both of them, and the customer was like, yeah. And so, like, I'm pretty sure it was staged, not gonna lie. Like, it just felt like it was
Oh,
just,
it is. Yeah.
yeah. And so, I don't know. It was hilarious, and the guy definitely was looking for his 15 minutes of fame, and he definitely got probably more like an hour and a half of fame. But it was just so funny and just all around like such. I've covered a lot of basketball games in my in my time as a journalist, and yeah, that's never seen that happen before. And then Duquesne's coach, Keith
Dambrot, yeah.
Nimrod, thank you. I was like,
Mhm.
how do I pronounce this? That's what he opens his press conference with. Unprovoked. No one asks him about him, and he goes, only at Duquesne can this happen. And we're just like,
My favorite part about the whole thing is the simplicity of it all. This wasn't turned into him getting beat up in the tunnel by security or arrested, and the fact that while every media outlet in the country seemingly has a story on it, we don't know who this guy is. We don't know how he got in the arena with McDonald's. Like, I refuse to believe that he just walked up as a true Uber Eats delivery guy and security without a ticket just let him in. He clearly was a student or someone who had a ticket. But how did you get McDonald's in? Regardless, like they would not let you through the gates with McDonald's. That had to have been snuck in somehow. And we may never know that story. And I kind of love that we might never know that story because it's something that was just a fun thing that didn't turn serious. You know, normally when you have someone running on the court, it's about a serious protest or someone's trying to fight a player. You know, it could be very dramatic, very intense. That was just very simple. Duquesne's like, get out of here.
yeah.
Like, it would have been handled the same way at a middle school basketball game, essentially. It just wouldn't have went viral. And wow, I mean, what a moment. So what were you able to find out about any of this? Has anyone reached out to you and tried to give you the inside scoop? Because I'm confident a week from now we're going to see a YouTube vlog about how I delivered Uber Eats on a Division I college basketball court. You know, it's going to be a TikTok or it's going to be a vlog or something, and I'm sure there's going to be copycats to follow. But what do you know about it right now?
So this first, let me speculate. I feel like he had to have an inside man, someone who was allowed to bring their bag in with the McDonald's. But then, how do you get the Coke in? That's the kicker. Yeah, no, it was. I wasn't able to get many details. I tried to track down both guys while in the arena, and neither of them were anywhere to be found. I think they both kind of left after this whole thing for fear of actually getting kicked out. I talked to players and coach, and they all were like, "This is just insane," and laughing about it. And like you said, that's the cool part, is that it was just like so funny. The only like true account I've seen is Austin Hansen, as Loyola Chicago's like video director. He had a pretty close up view, and you can hear the guy like saying, Oh, anybody got a delivery? Anybody got a delivery? Like, and he's mic'd too. Like you can see in the video that he has a mic.
Yeah.
And lots of people were videoing him. And a lot of, like, what's so funny is, like, the Duquesne community is so, like, this is hilarious. And most people are. But there are a couple, like, Loyola Chicago fans that are like, what the heck? Philip Alston wouldn't have turned the ball over if that didn't happen. Which, like, maybe, but Loyola was not close to
You
winning.
guys are like 6-10.
Yeah.
Or something like that too. Like, let's
Mhm.
just relax.
Mhm.
Like, this isn't gonna make or break your tournament hopes.
Yeah, so that's what I've seen. I tried to get in contact with the guys. I put out a big tweet and was like, "Hey, if anyone knows them," but I wasn't able to get the chance to talk to security. But you can hear the security guy in the video going, you can't be here, you can't be here, you can't be here," and just like gently like nudging him away, which is just like crazy to me because I feel like in many other
Oh
arenas,
my God.
handcuffs gone. And so I kind of love how not a big deal it was.
Right.
And
I
now it's just like a big deal on everything else. Like
right.
I have people tagging me to be on Around the Horn or part of my take or any of those because I was there. And I just can't believe I was there because like what are the chances that I'm there?
Right. I mean,
And
that's a hell of a way to start your time at the Post-Gazette. So, well, we talked obscure college basketball in Pittsburgh. Let's talk actual college basketball here. Three of the quote unquote area teams that the Post-Gazette, will dish some coverage out toward are on the bubble right now. Pitt, West Virginia, and Penn State. And depending on whose bracketology you follow, be it CBS, The Athletic, ESPN, Cats at NCAA.com, whoever, Rothstein, all three of them are always around a 9 to a 12 seed. Depending on the week, some are the first team in or the last team out or the first team out, things like that. And it's really exciting. So Abby, as someone who is new to the area, but you knew you were going to get this job for a couple weeks, like you accepted it. You took a little bit of time to move here from Wisconsin. You were following all three teams equally. You're watching them every night, and you still continue to do so. As someone who's just been following them this year, you have no predetermined biases. Who is the best team? Who is the most deserving of a tournament bid between Pitt, West Virginia, and Penn State, and why?
So I wrote some notes first of all, because I was like looking at it and like Noah said I watched all three of them pretty much constantly since I got this job, like 3 screens because there was one day where they were all playing at the same time on the same day, and I think Pitt is the most deserving, but I also unfortunately think that Pitt might be the least likely to get in because of the Big Ten bias and just how powerful the Big 12 is right now. Like the ACC, it's kind of considered to be having a down year right now. And so I think that could hurt Pitt. But here's the numbers. Is Pitt's 14-7, 7-3 in conference play, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And they're the only one with a winning conference record right now.
Yes.
Of those 3 teams. They have notable wins over NC State, UNC, Virginia, Wake Forest last night, Northwestern, which who would have thought the Northwestern game would have been like an important win, but Northwestern's like kind of leading the Big Ten, not leading, but like up there in the Big Ten right now. And so I think those are all good wins to have on their slate. The same at the other side of the coin, they do have a couple losses that it would be like great if they didn't have that would make it a stronger case for them to be going in. Florida State comes to mind, which was my first unofficial game at the Post-Gazette. Clemson, Duke, Vandy, and so it's just like I'm nervous for Pitt that those bubble losses, as I've dubbed them, are going to outweigh the notable wins. In that sense. And so I think Pitt absolutely should make it into the tournament. I think they've played phenomenally. I think they're the strongest of the 3 teams. But then when you look at Penn State, if you're a Big Ten team and you have at least a 500 record, you're likely getting in. And that's, as someone who covered the Big Ten, for those who don't know, I covered Wisconsin for a year and a half. It's just crazy to me that Penn State is like the second most likely to come in after Pitt when they're 2-6 in Big Ten play. and West Virginia's 4-5 in Big 12 play. And the Big 12 is arguably the hardest conference
Oh,
right
yeah.
now. And so it's just like, gotta love that Big 10 bias. People love to put, the selection committee loves to put Big 10 in there. But I think Pitt has the best case, and then I'd argue West Virginia. Penn, I think they all have good cases.
Yeah, I do too. I was just gonna say, I think all three are tournament teams. I actually think that West Virginia probably is the most deserving of the three, simply because the Big 12, if you look at any rating system, if you look at the national AP rankings, if you look at net, if you look at KenPom, whatever you use to value good basketball teams, the Big 12 is just dominant. And now one could argue, oh, okay, well, if there's a whole bunch of ranked teams and they all beat each other, they're just going to trade spots in those rankings and they're all just going to have really good quad one wins, as opposed to the Big 10, who has the number one team in the country right now and no other ranked opponent. So, how did Purdue get to number one if it's not beating anyone that's ranked? Or the ACC, same thing, where their bracketologists have 8 teams from the ACC making the tournament, and there's only really 2 to 3 consistently ranked teams there week in and week out. But I just like West Virginia. I mean, it's 3-8 in quad win competition, but just the fact that it's played 11 quad one opponents so far, and we're not even in February yet. I think that says a lot. If you're comparing West Virginia and Pitt, you have to point out that West Virginia beat Pitt this year.
Mm-hmm.
So on the road for WVU, and while that wasn't nearly the same Pitt team that we see now, that's a big win for West Virginia, I think. A non-conference win, second game of the season on the road over a rival, that should be a resume booster. I like where, maybe I don't think it's the most deserving of the three, but I think it's the most likely simply because of what you mentioned, the Big 12 bias. I think there's a chance we could see all 10 teams from the Big 12 make the tournament.
And that's what makes me nervous for West Virginia's chances, is that I don't think this, in the past, the selection committee hasn't been as favorable to the Big 12.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I'm nervous that because they have all of those ranked teams, that the bottom teams, which West Virginia is at the bottom for no fault of their own, they're playing amazing teams day in and day out. And it's not like they're losing by a lot either. No. Like, they've been in the mix. And so I'm just worried that the rest of the Big 12 is so stacked that people are going to be like, I don't know if West Virginia should be in there. And again, I think it's funny when you look at the Big 10 bias compared to the Big 12 is teams that are doing worse than West Virginia are going to get in, even though they're not ranked, even though they're not in the best conference in the league, right, or in the country right now. And I think that's the frustrating part for a lot of teams is you see these Power 5 schools, these Big 10 schools really specifically, like people still have 9-10 Big 10 schools going into the bracket or going into the tournament. And that's just crazy to me because the Big 10, I don't think there are that many schools that deserve it. But I do think West Virginia deserves it. And I think they could miss out because of those biases around the country.
And speaking on conference biases, as we kind of wrap up this part of the show here, I think one thing that could help Pitt, you mentioned how the ACC is weaker. I think out of these three, Pitt is by far the most likely to make a run in the conference tournament. I'm not saying Pitt can win the ACC. I mean, I will say it could. That tournament is up for grabs for anyone, considering Pitt beat Virginia, who's by far and away the best team in the ACC right now. But it has a chance to show what it can do against Miami. It showed that it can compete against Clemson, a game it probably should have won at home earlier this month. It beat North Carolina. It has another matchup against the Tar Heels on the road on February 1st. It gave Duke. I mean, I just think there is no true front runner aside from maybe Virginia in the ACC. So I think a semifinal run in the ACC tournament, if you're Pitt, pair that with 20 regular season wins, you're a lock to make it. I don't care how weak people think the ACC is. If you make it to the Final Four in that conference weekend and have a 20-plus win cushion before that tournament starts, you're going to go dancing. You might be one of the last 4 teams to get in, but that should be enough for the Panthers. And I think that potential boost they could gain from their conference tournament that Penn State and West Virginia would have a harder time gaining just because it's so much more difficult in those two conferences right now. That could push Pitt over the edge.
And if we're speculating about March, I think Pitt has the best chance of the three of them to make a tournament run, in my opinion.
It'd be interesting. I mean, if they shoot 50% from three, I would like their chances against just about anyone. But we'll flip over now as we wrap up the show to some college football talk. Abby, you were with us yesterday, Wednesday, when Pitt made three of its newest players available to the media, all WPIAL guys, Phil Jurkovec, Derrick Davis Jr., and Donovan McMillon, all coming in from outside programs through the transfer portal. And I think they had a lot of interesting things to say. I think each one of them has a significant chance to provide immediate impact, especially Jurkovec and McMillon. I think we will, without question, see both of them as starters. Derrick Davis Jr., I'm very interested to see how they use him, with him switching over full-time to running back. Pitt has probably Hammond Jr. Slated in to start at that starting running back spot, but they don't have a lot of depth behind him. So I could see him getting carries as well. And you weren't here to watch him in high school. The dude was unreal when it came to running the football, and you saw how big he is in person. He is going to be a tough guy to tackle in the ACC. Just interested to get your thoughts on what all three of the new Panthers had to say.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is, because I'm not from the area, so I don't have the background knowledge of the high school environment here. And I think the most interesting thing is how pro WPIAL they were.
Oh, yeah.
And just talking about how important it is to have WPIAL guys come back, and how great it is that they're coming back. And first of all, I unfortunately have to note, sorry, my dog, love
You're
it.
good. He's a WPIAL guy too. Let's go.
Yeah, he's Finley. Come here, buddy. I thought WPIAL was a school at first, but then I was like, oh, okay, it's a conference. I got this. And I just think that was really cool for them, all three, even though they did leave. And I'm a big proponent on leaving your hometown and then maybe coming back. Like, I left my hometown, haven't been back yet, but I'm not opposed to it. But I love that they were all talking about how important that culture is and how important it is to get WPIAL guys back. And I loved the story between Derrick and Donovan talking about on the field and all that jazz. And it was just cool to see their passion about WPIAL.
Yeah, and so as someone who has been around here, when Pitt was in its heyday in the 80s, it was led by a ton of local stars. Dan Marino went to Pittsburgh Central Catholic in the WPIAL, and you know he led the charge in the 80s, and they had this great offensive line headlined by guys like Bill Fralick and Jimbo Covert, who grew up in Western Pennsylvania, went to Penn Hills and Freedom. And, you know, there were just stars all over the place. And if you look at some of the best Pitt players of all time, Darrell Revis, an Aliquippa guy, WPIAL guy, and Aaron Donald. And in recent years, I think because if you look at this generation, when I was growing up, Pitt had two primary head coaches. It had Walt Harris, and then they moved on to Dave Wannstedt. And those were the guys. And with that consistency in the program came some tangible success. There was a Fiesta Bowl appearance here and there. There were definitely first round draft picks, Larry Fitzgerald, a Heisman finalist. There was some stability. When these kids were growing up, there was no stability in Pitt football. And, you know, you had the 1 year with Todd Graham. You had a couple years with Paul Christ. And as a result, you saw players start to lose interest. The town really start to lose interest in Pitt football because it was a whole bunch of 6-6, 7-5 seasons and just mediocre or just a little bit better. Pat Narduzzi's arrival kind of changed that. And while he came in, there was still a heavy WPIAL presence on his team. I wrote about this a couple months ago. When he came in, there were 22 guys who started at least half the season that played in the City League or in the WPIAL at their high school level. But as time went on, the top tier talent in this area started going outside of some of them went to Penn State, some of them went to the SEC. But now, because of Pitt's recent success, winning the 2021 ACC championship, winning 9 games in a Sun Bowl and finishing ranked this year, guys are starting to realize, hey, we don't need to go south to have a successful college career. We can compete for a conference title. We can be nationally ranked. We can play in meaningful games. And depending on your position, Pitt has a great track record of getting certain guys to the next level. Donovan McMillon talked about that, how he looks around and there's a Pitt player in a lot of NFL secondaries because of Pitt's defensive scheme, where it's blitz, 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 cover one, cover zero. You're kind of battle tested, and teams like that. And Pitt has 2 corners on its roster right now who, come 2024, will be NFL cornerbacks. And you look at that, and that was enough for McMillon to get a try or give Pitt a try. And Pitt's always produced great running backs. You could go James Conner, LaShawn McCoy, or you could go all the way back to Curtis Martin and Tony Dorsett, and there are plenty in between that I did not mention. Dion Lewis, Ironhead Hayward, whatever. Signetti's scheme is great for running. My whole point of all of this is, with success and a more established presence at the national level, you get credibility. And these local guys who grew up when they were growing up and Pitt didn't have any credibility or stability as a program, they see that that's changed, and now they're willing to try it out. MJ Devonshire started that out, coming from Kentucky to Pitt in 2020, in that offseason going into 21. And I think he was the leader of that charge. And McMillon even admitted that. He said, hey, we saw what MJ did, and we thought, why not do the same? And it's very interesting now that guys like Jurkovec are hammering the drum, saying you need to stick around here. There's no need to leave your hometown. When he did that, as did the other 2, they're basically, some people are calling him hypocritical, and I guess you could take that point of view. How I interpreted it was, hey, I've seen what else is out there, and it's not that much different than what we have here. And, some crowds might be bigger, some facilities might be nicer, but overall, if your goal is to compete for a major conference title with the expanded playoff, if you win that conference, you might be in the playoff and get to the next level. You can do those things in Oakland. So those were my takeaways. I think it's just a big sign of what has been built over the past 8 seasons by Narduzzi. They're by no means on the same level as a Penn State or even the SEC programs that the others went off to, Florida or an LSU or a Notre Dame, like where Jurkovec went. But Pitt is trending upward by these moves, as you can clearly tell by what these new players had to say.
Yeah, and just their passion. Like, they were so excited to talk to media. When we got the email, I was like, football availability in January? But then it just made so much sense, like, hearing from these guys and just how excited they are to be here. And I always think that's a good test of a good program, is if your guys are excited, like, even if you are going 6-6, which Pitt isn't, but it's just a good sign all around.
All right. Well, Abby, first show is in the books. Any final thoughts? How bad did I do? Do you hate doing a show with me?
You did great.
Oh, come on. I didn't do that great. You did great. Well, be sure to give the Post-Gazette a subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that subscribe button. Follow us on our social media platforms and keep tuning in. We'll have more YouTube content here on the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel each day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed it on Apple Podcasts, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. For 6 months of digital access to post-gazette.com for just $6, click the link down in the description.